Hello and welcome to another live windsurf coaching. You're here, no rush. I hope you had a windy week. I know that a lot of you didn't. If you're in Europe, I know a lot of Europe has not been windy, but I still hope that you had some wind. I'm still on my little sabbatical, but I've got all my gear ready. I got my sails ready, so when it gets windy, I'm going to be getting in the water. I've been checking forecasts, so I'm looking to it myself. Hey, Rasmus, moin moin. Maybe I'll come visit you in Silt. I'll take the train and ask you to pick me up. I like windsurfing in Silt. Silt can be really fun with the right conditions. Hey, Ragnar, Suna, Caro, Matt, John. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Jorg. Hello, Sweden. Yeah, it's not been that windy in Europe, I gather. But there has been some wind. I know that there's been wind in the Canary Islands, a few other places. And this is something that's going to come up again later in the live stream. But I can't stress enough how valuable it can be to do work in 8 to 14 knots of wind working on light wind sail handling. Get a big board, small-ish sail, not a tiny sail, but I don't mean go out on a 6.0. I mean go out on a 5.0 or a 4.7, and you can work on your duck jibes, heli tacks, all of that. It's so much fun, and it really then pays off, especially with the basics like tacking, and then when it is windy and when it's good, you've put in that work. You've done that work, so you don't have to focus on your tacks. You can just nail them. You don't have to focus on whatever else in your sail handling. Something goes a little bit weird, but because you've done so much practice, you've got that awareness about your sail and you're able to save it. So putting in the work on those light wind days can be really helpful for the windier days. It can really pay off. So I recommend it. I know a lot of you guys are already doing that. And if you're not, I recommend looking into it. Hey, Axel. Axel has been on a tear. He was in Morocco. Now he's in El Miramar and Lucat. Awesome. 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 And yeah, Rasmus, let me know if there's a good forecast. Hey, Hans. Hans had a 4.7 windsup last week between the foilers. Good wave selection practice and backwind riding. Yeah, so this is exactly what we're talking about. So even if it's really light wind, so Hans, how many knots were there? How many knots were you sailing in? So this is exactly what I'm talking about. Getting out on a 4.7 and a windsup or a big board, 130 liter board, free ride board, freestyle board, 120 liters, whatever it is that you can stand on it, can go around, you work on just basics. We work on the tacks, work on the heli tacks, work on sail 360s, and all of those things, they pay off so much than when it's windy. So Hans is saying it was 10 to 15 knots. And that's even on the windier side for that kind of sailing. You can do what I'm talking about, 8 knots and up. You can do it even less, but that takes a little bit more dedication. Hey, Dennis. Hello to Mule. We're going to talk about your tabletop. In fact, let's get that thing pulled up. Hello on Facebook, Forward Journey. All right, let's get that pulled up. Hi, Mark. Welcome to the live chat. No wind in southern Sweden. Yeah, that's what I keep hearing. All right, I'm gonna just refresh this page, and we're gonna get into it. So we're gonna get into Dennis's tabletop first. So awesome post. Dennis is in Mule, and he wants to work on his tabletops there, among other things, I assume. So here's a video. Let's make this full screen. And here's the first tabletop. Nice tabletop. And the second tabletop. Boom. Look at the tweak on that thing. And so he wants to improve his tabletops. Now, there are some major differences I see between these two. And I think that focusing on those differences and doing them more like the second one is what is going to lead to doing more and more tweaked tabletops, getting even more tweaked than the second one. So I did a post here. If we go down to the comments. So the one on the left is the first jump, the less tweaked one. And the one on the second one is the second one, the more tweaked one. You guys can't, shit. Oops, sorry. All right. All right. Let me start over. I'm sorry. Messed that up. Let's watch the videos again. I'll watch the videos again. All right, so let's throw this in full screen and go at it. So, boom, tabletop. All right. Now here's a boom, more tweaks, tabletop. It's also higher, but there's some key differences to how the second one is initiated. And Dennis, if you work on that initiation and getting more of your tabletops initiated like the second one, they're going to get more tweaked, even more tweaked than this one is, because that's the road to doing them tweaked. So here's a side-by-side picture. The one on the left here is the less tweaked one, the first one, and the one on the right is the second one, the more tweaked one. And so my question to Dennis was, what is the difference that you see between those two pictures? And I think it's really interesting. I love this comparison. Dennis, this is such an awesome comparison because you can really see some key elements of tabletops by comparing these two pictures. So the first thing that stands out to me is in the less tweaked one at this early stage, the board is more tweaked than the upper body. And in the second one, which ends up being the more tweaked one, the upper body is more tweaked than the board. And something that really helps me understand the mechanics of the tabletop is thinking of it like a whip, or like in the kitchen when you roll up the dish towel and you flick it on your brother when you're a kid, or your wife, or whoever, that whipping motion. And so the tweak from the tabletop starts from the upper body, and the farther up, or the more you're initiating it from your torso rather than the board, the more tweaked it's going to get. And the feeling, like how I feel it, is that the legs and the feet are really loose, like the end of that towel, the whip, and the power, the force, is coming from your torso, from your hips, your torso, even a little bit in your head, shoulders. And by forcing that torso twist and letting the legs be relatively loose, you don't want them hard trying to tweak. You want them to be able to carry that twisting power, force. That's what allows them to then come around and get more tweaks. So it's like a whip, where then your feet are the end of that whip. So think of the whip, and that power, that force, is coming from your torso. The other thing that can be really helpful to think about is getting the board, everything around the mast in a C motion. And so like this, you're pushing everything somewhat straight up, whereas when you're whipping more, what happens is the board sort of pushes out first and then comes around. And so you're thinking of everything traveling in like a C, right? So it comes out and then over. There's a C. Whereas if it goes straight up, which is sort of the direction that is happening here, it starts to get stuck and you don't get as tweaked. Relating to what I talked about before is like with the head. So we want this torso guiding that tweak, and the head is an important part of that, right? And so here the head is looking forward. Here the head is looking back towards the water. So you want to get your head, your hips, all of that looking towards the water, and then just letting the feet whip and extend out from that. Does that make sense? And the other thing is, you don't want your front arm to be straight. So here, the front arm looks pretty straight, but you can, by sort of holding that front arm more bent, it can allow you to sort of push the mast down, sort of bring your body up and around to get it around the mast. Does that make sense? So Rasmus is also mentioning the head, and that Levi is a big proponent of this technique for tweaking his own tabletops, and 100% agree. And it comes down to the exact same thing that I was saying before: is you need that tweak to come from the body, upper body, not from the lower body. If it's coming from the lower body and it's going straight up, or even if you can't get that C motion from the lower body and it's muscled, you're never going to get much tweak. You need it to be like a whip. So think of the whip, and that whipping motion is starting from the torso. And so you guide it with the head, with the torso, and then it comes hips, all of that then is trying to face down towards the water. And then the legs follow, and it's going in that C motion. And the feeling is actually really similar to a tweaked aerial feeling, these super tweaked aerials, where it's got to come out a little bit. So you're not aiming to push everything straight up. You're aiming to push your feet out and then around, out and around. We can go back to the video and watch it again to hopefully try and make that make sense better. But that concept is really important. It's the same for these super tweaked aerials, which are a lot more difficult than tabletops, but it's interesting. It's the same principle. So pushing out and then around. So we're getting a little bit of the C here. If your hips are higher, this will be more tweaked, like on the second one, which can come from bringing that front hand down a little bit. You also want to, it looks like you're already looking back up at the board. You can keep looking at the water for a long time on this one. So, but the main thing is, rather than trying to improve these ones at this moment, Dennis, what I would do is try to get all of your takeoffs like this one, where you're leading with the torso and getting that tweak, getting the head, all of that. And then once you are consistently doing them like this, then we can work on adding a few other elements to the technique. But now, because you're doing the right technique on some, but not all, what I want you to do is sort of pay attention to what is the right technique for initiating it, and then get that so it's second nature. And then we can move on to adding things to the technique. But while you're in this sort of transition phase where you're doing some with not the right technique and some with the right technique, let's get your muscle memory so you're all set up for just doing them always with that good technique. Does that make sense? Does that whip concept make sense? Where that power is all coming for the torso. I mean, these I couldn't have made a better two examples myself. You can really see what's happening between the two. Can you feel it? Hopefully you can see it. Hopefully everyone can see it. But can you feel it? That's my question. Hey Max, I don't think I saw you show up in the chat. Hope you're good. Hello. All right, Dennis, while we wait for you to answer, I'm going to move on to our other questions, but I am curious about the feeling. But awesome. All right, next up, we've got the questions from my thread. So Alex and Jorgen are wondering, where's the wind gone and will it come back? I think it's come back to the Canary Islands and maybe a few other places, but yeah, it's been kind of windless. All right, next up, Dennis has a question that I really like about what other sports help most for windsurfing when there's no wind. And here's my answer. And it depends on what you want to train. So if you're choosing one sport to train for fitness, I think that's rowing. I rowed competitively for a few years, and I was windsurfing less, and I felt like that really helped keep me in windsurfing shape. I had strong legs, even helped with the calluses on the hands. good cardiovascular strength, some grip strength. So like rowing for fitness is pretty good. Now, rowing's not for everyone. It's a tough, brutal sport. But if we're looking at just, okay, what's the best sport for training windsurf fitness? I'd probably say rowing. Um, for wave knowledge, it's surfing or stand-up paddling. You learn a lot about waves, where waves break, how to read waves from surfing and stand-up paddling in the waves. So for wave awareness, wave knowledge, those fundamental skills, surfing or supping. For sail handling, it's light wind windsurfing. So you get a big board, you get a sup board, you get a big free ride board, and you work on those sail 360s. You work on, um, all of these little things. There's so many things to work on, and it's actually amazing. For jumping, trampoline work is really good. Learning how to do flips, having the awareness when you do backflips, front somersaults, spins. It teaches you a body awareness that really gives you comfort in the air. And that can help with your confidence for learning forwards or push loops or backflips or whatever it is. So that for that aerial awareness, trampoline. For body awareness as it relates to riding waves, surfing is obviously a huge one. I really like surf skating too. I think you can learn a lot from surf skating about getting low, about applying power and pressure, leaning over. So Rasmus is saying that the sail handling is really improved by wind skating, and I totally understand that because you've got the same dynamics as like when you're on the boards. You can work on the sail 360s, you can work on your heli tacks, you can work on all of these things that then really pay dividends when you have wind on the water. So Rasmus, how much wind do you need to go wind skating? What's the limit? Jeff is saying, hey Jeff, that he's been learning to wing foil and he's going to have wind tomorrow. Awesome. Max has a question about kit geometry. So my answer to this is test, test, test. So there are some rules, there are some heuristics, but most important thing is test, test, test. Because what's right for me might not be right for you. What's right for you a year ago might not be right for you this year. And don't let that be daunting. I know that sounds intimidating, possibly, but let it be a challenge, something fun. And it makes it so that you always have a little something that you can work on, a little something that you can change. By adjusting your equipment regularly, it helps you adjust to foreign conditions and foreign gear more easily. We've talked about this a lot on the stream, and it's really important. By adjusting your gear constantly, you get less stuck in that. Like we all know the feeling. I know the feeling. I know you know the feeling of having that comfort zone gear that you don't change the boom height, you don't change anything. And then something happens, you break your boom and you have to get a new boom. And then it feels like you have to learn how to windsurf again. Everything feels new and different. And oh my God, it's crazy. And it's just a new boom, right? Or you get a new harness and it's like, oh my God, I can't even sail. But the more you're used to making these little adjustments, then the less that adjustment is. And it goes for new gear, it goes for new spots or different kinds of conditions. And the new gear thing is really important because if you're testing a new board or a new sail, it can be really difficult to know if it's not as good as what you're used to, or if it's just not what you're used to. And so then it doesn't feel good. But the more you're able to adapt, then the more then you can actually test new gears. You can try a different board and you can say, I like this. Not just, oh, it feels so foreign, I can't handle it. Right. And so doing that testing is really big for your windsurfing. Now, some heuristics. I feel like a good place to put your boom is around your nipple level. Now, some people like it higher, some people like it lower. I like it higher sometimes, I like it lower sometimes. In stronger wind, I like to put the boom higher. In lighter wind, really focusing on down the line wave riding, I like to put it lower. In onshore waves, I like to have the boom higher. In offshore waves, I like to have it a little bit lower. And I'm always moving it around. And because I'm always moving it around, I have an idea of what's going to happen when I change it. So when I do put it up, I know, okay, That's going to make the sail feel a little bit lighter. It's going to be harder to really lie the sail down in the bottom turn, but it's going to be more early planing. I'm going to feel like I have a little bit more control over the gear, which is something I feel. You might feel something a little bit different, but those for the boom height, that's what I feel. My go-to would be somewhere, like I said, somewhere around my nipples. But sometimes I will put it higher. Again, I put it higher for onshore. I put it higher for stronger wind. Sometimes I'll put it higher for really light wind too, because it is earlier planing when the boom is higher. But if it's down the line and light wind, float and ride, I like to have it lower. And then I have a really maneuverable sail. For a bigger sail size, I like to put the boom lower because it makes the sail more maneuverable in the wave riding. So when I'm on my 5.5, I make sure I've got it kind of low. Whereas on my 3.7, the sail's already really maneuverable. It doesn't need that low of a boom, and maybe I want a little bit higher because the wind is stronger, and I like that feeling of the higher boom and the stronger wind just for control when I'm sailing around because the sail feels less heavy. Like when you have that lower boom with the strong wind, it can feel like the sail is really pulling a lot. But I know all this for me because I've tested it all. And that's what I want you to do. So you can take what I'm saying, you have some heuristics, you have some like idea of guidance. But what's really important is that you do that work yourself and you get to know your own equipment. For harness lines, you want your harness lines at a minimum to be the length from your palm to your elbow. Now, your harness lines, there's also not a tried and true number based on your height because it depends on how long your arms are. It depends on your harness. If you ride your harness high, you don't need as long a harness lines as someone who rides a seat harness, right? Because your hook's in a different place. So now, where do you put your hook? Again, it's also personal preference. I really like a low hook. It's not something though that I'm like super crazy about, but some people it makes a huge difference. I mean, we've got Thomas in the group who's always posting about the harness and the harness height, and I've tried riding my harness really low, like on the the trochanter bone, and it feels really good. And I totally agree with him. It feels great. Now you need to have longer harness lines, but you have a lot of control over the gear. It feels good. Now, does it feel so good that I'm gonna make changes to make sure that I'm always sailing that way? Maybe not, like I like to push my harness down low, uh, but going too far out of my way, it's not for me. But maybe it is for you. You might find riding that harness really low, the waist harness really low, or riding a seat harness, because then you're able to use your hips to control the gear rather than your back and your body weight. Maybe that's a better feeling. In which case, then you need longer harness lines, right? So everything is connected, and it depends a lot on personal preference. All right, so let's pull up. So Max, you said in the chat that you're talking about geometry as it refers to harness line length and boom height in relation to hook height. So he's gone back to 28 lines after a few years, 30, feeling that it's too long. Yeah, but there's your answer right there. If you tried the 30 and you feel like it's too long, go back to 28. There's your answer. I think that this personal preference, you're doing exactly what I recommend is this testing. And then, so like what I hate is when people are like, oh, you need to be riding long lines. Everyone needs to be on long lines. Get 34s, get 34s. And you see some people and they're like stretched out like this and they've got their boom too high to compensate for the really long lines. And that's not right for them. For some people, it is right to go really long and then they really like it. But it's not for everyone. And so doing exactly what you're doing, Max, is I think the right way to go. I think it's the right way to go. I've done the same thing. I've switched between 28 and 30, 28 and 30, and I don't know what it depends on. It depends on my harness, depends on whatever. Sometimes I feel like the 28s are so short and it's killing my back, and I go to the 30s and it feels great. And the other times I feel like, it's just kind of long. I want to go to the 20. I don't know. I also switch between 28 and 30. I've been on 28s now for the last year. I brought 30s now because on Maui they started feeling too short, and maybe because I was pushing my harness down lower and lower and lower. I'm not sure. But I mean, the general rule is the higher your hook, the shorter your harness lines, the lower your hook, the longer your harness lines. But then it depends a lot on your arm length and all of that. Um, so Rasmus is saying this isn't so. Let's scoot back. So Rasmus is saying that 4 to 5 knots is good for wind skate. Axel is saying 6 to 10. But Rasmus is saying that a little bit more wind is better because then you really have the sail dynamics going. And that's when you really start learning about all of these sail control things, right? And getting in that practice. Uh, but for most people, if it's stronger wind, maybe they want to get on the water. Depends, I guess, where you live. Maybe you live in a place where it can be windy for wind skating, but not for windsurfing. Max is saying that he's down 23 kilos since Christmas and still dropping, doing push-ups and squats. Right on, man. That's awesome. And that's going to have a big effect, right? On your harness and your harness lines as well, because it's going to be in a different place because your body's changed. This is so awesome. I'm so proud of you. That's awesome. What a fit beast. I love it. I love it. I love it. Um, Yeah, now your waist harness sits in the right spot. Yeah, perfect. Love it. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. That's awesome. Oh, I still have the live start soon on here. Um, yeah, awesome. Awesome, awesome. All right, next question, moving along. Uh, what can be learned on flat water days that would benefit in the waves? Yeah, so one of the courses that I've been working on, and I've talked about this a lot, so I'm not gonna talk about it too much, is wave sailing with no waves. How do you practice wave sailing with no waves? And so this is a whole course I've been developing, but I want to get just a few things to help you. First of all, getting used to going the toe heel, feeling that rail engagement, toe heel. You can jibe in the straps, so don't take out your back foot. Do your jibes in the straps and pretend it's a bottom turn. Now, Baltic sailing, you're used to onshore sailing. Perfect. That really correlates to a jibe. It correlates more to a jibe than a down the line bottom turn. Make sure you're getting those arms straight, the sail away from you, really leaning your body in, try to touch your nose to the water, get low before you go. All of those key components, working on that in the jibe. You can work on the backside riding, doing little shove-its. So sail goes back, body goes forward, come into the wind. Then you lean your body over the center line of the board, push the sail towards the nose. That's the basic dynamic of a backside, right? Sail goes back, body goes forward on the heels, you carve into the wind. Once you're up into the wind, you lean forward over the center line, push the sail towards the nose. It will be backwinded, push you up. And you can do that in flat water. And you can really work on these backsides, get the awareness of carving up into the wind, getting backwinded, using that power to pop up. A really good skill. You can practice sailing clue first switch foot. So you can do this just going through the jibe and just staying, not changing anything, not switching. And for the Baltic Sea, you have to do a lot of onshore wave riding. Being comfortable in that switch stance clue first position will help your wave riding. You can practice that without any waves, right? So those are things you can do. Practicing your tacks. Do you nail 100% of your tacks, 10 out of 10 tacks? If not, work on your tacks. I'm going to be releasing my tack course. I want to say this week. I'm going to say it's this week. So we did this tack course. When was that? Was that last year? And some of you guys were in it. It was awesome. Now I've turned that into a standalone product. Uh, I've been putting it together, finishing up the editing. It's almost done. So I want to put it online this week. I'm just going to hold myself to that. It's going to go online this week. So if you are wanting to improve your tax, stay tuned for that. There's going to be a tack course coming online. And if you're into wave sailing, learning how to tack, getting your tacks 10 out of 10 is a game changer. Helps you stay upwind, helps you catch the wave you want to catch, helps you turn around quickly. Tack, work on your tacks. Whether you take my course or not, that's something you can do when there's no waves. Work on your tacks. All right, so Darius, we've gone through a lot of different things you can work on with no waves. Once you've gone through that list, let us know and I'll throw out some more. Yeah, awesome. Thanks for the support on Facebook. All right. So John T says the lack of wind has got me fantasizing about an autumn trip to Ireland, and he knows that Brandon Bay is a good place to start, and he's familiar with Northwest from surfing, but does not know what County Clare is like for wave spots. So my feeling about Ireland, and I've been only once. I went for a month. I think it was in 2012. I stayed in Eski in January, and then drove around a bunch. And so that's the thing is you can drive around, so you can go all to the different spots, Maharati, Iski, blah 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 blah. It's just a whole bunch of different places. I see that Phil recommends Maharati. There's a lot of spots that you can drive to, and I really do recommend paying attention to the forecast and driving. So if it's windy where you are, great, stay there, get on the water, don't leave wind to find wind, all of that jazz. But if it's not windy, be paying attention to the forecast, because it can be that there isn't wind where you are, but there is wind a couple hours away, and it's an easy drive. Now, these other people know Ireland a lot better than I do, and so I recommend looking at their posts. All right. Alexis says, what is my opinion on using pure freestyle boards for small onshore European wave riding? So I don't. So complicated answer coming up. I have a lot of thoughts on this. So I used to do the same thing like Balls is doing, not just in onshore conditions, but also at Hokipa. Back when I was regularly sailing on a freestyle board, I would have the freestyle board in the car, and if the waves were small, I would take it out in the waves. And it was my 16th birthday on a session at Hokipa on the freestyle board, and I was doing these air takas. I love them. These awesome air takas, and just landing like so perfect in the waves. And I was trying to slow them down because I thought it was really cool to land with the nose still kind of pointing into the wave, and then sliding the last little like quarter just on the wave. And I do one of these. I'm on the freestyle board. The power of the wave comes into the board, big wide freestyle board, right? Comes at my foot. I broke my leg. 16th birthday. And swam in, left my gear. Someone rescued I think my dad swam out and rescued my gear. And yeah, broke my leg. So you have to be careful with the freestyle board because it's wider, so there's more force. And so with jumps or with hitting the lip, there's a lot more force in lips than you think. Now, European onshore wave riding, there's not that much force. It's kind of crumbly. But we were talking about how you see force in waves last week. We were talking about the waves in Fiji and how far the lip throws. That wave has a lot of force. If you have a throwing lip and you have a wide freestyle board and it hits that lip, it's going to put a lot of pressure on your ankles and your lower leg. And you do have to be careful with that. So that might not be what everyone is doing, but just be careful. I have to throw that out there because the board is wider. Now, that said, I think it is a really good supplement to other wave ride training. It teaches you a lot of different things. Now, notice I said supplement. It's not a replacement, because those freestyle boards with their big boxy rails, they're not going to carve. They're not made to carve. They don't have an outline to carve. They're made to slide. And if we watch this video from Balls, which I'll pull up, and it's super cool, but there's not a lot of carving. There's a lot of sliding. And Balls is an expert windsurfer. He's one of the best windsurfers in the world. He can get the board to do things, get on the rail, even though it's not made for that most people are not going to be able to do. So what I'm saying is that, yes, I recommend it. It's fun. It's a good supplement. Be careful, because there is more force coming up through the board. And then also, it's not a replacement. It's a supplement. All right, let's watch this video, because why not? Oh, we've got an ad. All right. Well, the ad is playing. We're going to go back to our group. We don't need an Airbnb ad in the middle of the live stream. All right. Ragnar says he's considering 2 weeks in Pozo in July. Is he ready? He's got no issue with high wind and usually sails in onshore conditions. Yes. Short answer is yes. And Eric, thank you, Eric. This is an awesome comment. I love the support. Remember that if you do get washed up in the bunker, It's not a walk of shame. It's just proof you're stepping outside your comfort zone. Awesome. Yep. Love it. This is a great answer. But Ragnar, the short answer is yes, you're ready. It's hard. Pozo's hard, especially on the big days. And I think that if you're going to go, it's important to be humble. And if it looks like a really big day, if it's blowing 3-4 and there's big shore break on those rocks, go somewhere else. There are some other spots. You can launch from, I don't know if you can still launch from the swimming area. It used to be allowed to launch from the swimming area. I'm not sure if that still is the case. But if it is the case, you can launch from there. It's super easy to launch. You've got no shore break. And then just be careful, be aware. Don't put yourself in any kind of dangerous situation. Or you can go to a different beach. There are other beaches that also work, especially when there's that much wind. So if it's a really heavy day, be humble. Don't go out. But in general, Ragnar, you're ready. The average Pozo day will be a piece of cake for you. Now, there are challenges with Pozo. The rocks are kind of shitty when it's blowing strong and you're slipping all over them. But you're ready, Ragnar. You're ready. And I think that's a great idea to go to Pozo. I might also go to Pozo. All right, here's the clip from Balls. So this is on a freestyle board in pretty much straight onshore conditions. I don't know if this is the freestyle board. It might have been the freestyle board more in the earlier part of the session. This looks more like he has a waveboard that looks like this, that has the really straight parallel outline. So I'm not sure if this is a freestyle board. This in the beginning was definitely a freestyle board. Let's go back to the beginning. So this is for sure a freestyle board. The other one, I'm not sure. It might not be a freestyle board. Because his waveboards are also look kind of funky, straight outlines like that. And so here you can see like it's having a hard time carving, but still getting the board. And this is what I mean with the sliding, is that these boards are made to slide. They're not made to carve. So he just did like a triple. I wouldn't call that a taka because the rotation isn't coming from the wave ride. It's like the power in the sail and then it pushes through. So it's more like a puñeta, the freestyle move. But awesome. You can see how much fun he's having, right? There's another, I think there's a bunch of these like puñeta moves. Here's another one. Again, you can see he's turning even under the lip. He's not hitting the lip. And it's not a carve. It's not really a taka. It's like the sail's loading up and then the board, which is designed to slide, just slides. He just lets the tail go and then just slides around. And so it's more of like a puñeta than a taka. And why does that matter? Because one is just style. Like if you're doing this kind of, I mean, this looks cool, but if you do that on a waveboard in a wave, nah, it's not that cool. And then it doesn't transfer to like heavier waves and more radical waveboard designs. Like the reasons this works is because, again, the sail is powered up and the board is made to slide. So then it's got the sail powered up in that position, pushes out the fins, everything just slides around, right? But that's like, there's a good example of it where you can see it happening without the lip of the wave. So you can see just loading up the fins, the sail's powered up, and then these boards are made to slide. And so it's going into this, it's like a puñeta, Klufers puñeta is the freestyle move. But you can see how much fun he's having. And I recommend it. Yeah, I recommend it. Rasmus is also saying that you can go to Vargas first. There's less wind and there's no bunker there. Yeah, Vargas is also a good spot. Just be aware, Ragnar, it is tide dependent. You want to be there not on high tide. So low tide going up is probably the best. Low tide, like mid tide going down. Mid tide in general is good. But if it's like mid tide to low, sometimes the wave can get kind of crunchy and weird. You can get like a bit of a messy wave. It can sort of dredge a bit and suck up. Silt does that too. Rasmus, you should be familiar with that. So it's tide dependent, whereas Pozo is tide dependent, but you can sail it on any tide. I mean, the conditions are tide dependent, but you can sail there on anything. Whereas Vargas, you don't really want to sail there on high tide because then the shore break is big and it's the wave. There's no wave. It's just breaking on the beach. It's just the shore break. All right. Yeah. Awesome clip from Balls. All right. Let's get back to our questions. So, last question. Jeff says, have we spoken about drop bins in Cape Town? When it's busy, he finds people snaking around him, some on purpose, some of them are pros, and jumping on waves that he's on. He doesn't maneuver very quickly, and so these little buggers can get 5 waves to my 1, and he gets very angry. Ouch. Yeah. So he's resorted to telling them to fuck off. Yeah, it makes him feel better to express himself. Yeah. So here, yeah, Ragnar, shoot me a message as well. But Jeff, we're coming to drop-ins. Shoot me a message, Ragnar, about what I know you just sent me a message, but shoot me a message about the dates because I'm also thinking about doing a Pozo trip. And so if you've got some leeway, and this goes for a few of you guys have been messaging me privately about doing some kind of coaching in Pozo. And that might be that we might be able to do it. We might be able to work something out. So I want to do a Pozo trip and yeah, just trying to coordinate it. This isn't going to be a clinic like the master classes in Denmark where it's so set up. It's going to be a little bit more under the radar coaching. But I would like to do something. There's seems to be a need for it, so I would like to do it. But there isn't time to set up. The Denmark coaching is a whole experience and it's a whole plan and it's a whole week, and I don't have time to do that. But we could do something in Posa. So let's stay coordinated. If that is something that you're interested in, and you're not Ragnar, because Ragnar already knows to contact me, shoot me a message, and I'll put you on the little list of people who are already interested. And there's no promises, and like I said, it's not going to be a full-on masterclass, but maybe there's the possibility of doing something there, because I want to do a Pozo trip anyway. All right, let's answer Jeff's question about the drop-in. So, Jeff, first of all, I don't know what's first of all. Second of all, third of all. First of all, I love that you're shouting at them. And even though you're a super nice guy, and I know it, I've chilled with you, you are a super nice guy. This energy, the F off energy, I sound so, I feel so bad saying this, but that energy is actually important. Because when we're riding waves, it's not the same energy as when we're chilling, having a coffee, talking about life. There is an important warrior, aggressive energy to doing well. So that warrior aggressive energy is important to then wave ride well, because you need to have some aggression to hit the lip and be willing to just put yourself in those moments, and to deal with fear in a different way than you would maybe when you were, you know, chilling in a completely different setting. So I think that like F you, it's my wave attitude is actually a good thing. Now, I don't want to get too philosophical about it, but what I mean is it's a good thing because it means that you're in the right aggressive mindset for wave riding, because there is this sort of warrior mindset for wave riding. Now, I'm not saying being an asshole. Definitely, I'm not saying snake people. Don't snake people. But I'm just saying it's not a bad sign. So, all right, we got that out of the way. Now, about the pros. One thing that it happens, and this is gonna sound bad, but it's not bad. And you guys that are in my special group, I'm telling you the secret with how to deal with it. So it's definitely not bad for you. Pros. We sail a lot of different places. This is our work, it's our livelihood. We're trying to get as many waves as we can. This is our office when we're on the water. There are a lot of people who catch waves that don't ride them or don't do anything with them. So there's a lot of testing that takes place where a pro will jibe on someone's wave and they'll pay attention to what the other person does. Are they going to call them off the wave? Are they going to not ride the wave? What are they going to do? Because we're out there working, and if you're out there having fun but not riding the waves, well, we're going to ride the wave, right? And this is common. I mean, this is something that I think all the pros do. I don't know if I've seen someone not do it. What's the response to it? The response is to hold your ground, and the sooner you hold your ground, the better. So the first time someone does it to you, super polite, you don't get aggressive like we were talking about. I know I just said being aggressive is good. But just saying like, "Hey, hey, I'm gonna ride this wave. Hey, hey." Now, the caveat to this, and Jeff, this is less relevant to you because I know you and I know this is not what's going on. But for everyone else, the caveat to this is make sure that when the pro is getting on your wave and you're getting annoyed, that they're taking a part of the wave that you would otherwise be riding. Something I see often is you have a long wave. Maybe it's in Pozo, maybe it's on Maui. This happens so much on Maui. And rider A is just going to ride one section. And the pro who has seen rider A ride all these waves sees where they're setting up and knows that they'll never have the time to make it to the next section, will then jibe on and ride the next section. So at Hokipa, we have middles and we have the point and the end bowl. And a lot of times a tourist, for example, will be setting up in middles, and I can see, which actually doesn't even really have anything to do with their ability, but that they're never going to make that end section because they're too deep, they're too high, and so they'll have a nice ride. They'll have one or two sections, and then the wave will break in front of them, and they're not going to get the end section. And so what a lot of people do is jibe on that. A lot of pros will do is they'll see that and they'll know it, so then they'll jibe on the end bowl to get a couple turns in there. Now, don't be the a-hole up on middles who then starts yelling at the guy at the end bowl, because you're not going to get to that section anyway. Ride your wave. You've got a great part of wave, and then it becomes an ego thing. So what I'm saying in this sort of yin and yang thing is, one, if it's a part of the wave that you're going to ride, stand your ground. Do it sooner rather than later. The sooner you do it, the sooner whoever it is going to stop trying to take your waves. The other side of it is waves are long. If someone is on a wave and they're not going to get in your way and they're a pro, just let them. They know what they're doing. Don't let your ego get in the way. Just let them ride it. Ride your part. Have fun. They'll have fun. It's all good, right? So the two sides to it, we'll just repeat this. One, stand your ground as soon as possible, because it can be that you're being tested or you're definitely being tested. Like sometimes there can be mistakes, right? You don't know whose wave it was, but most of the time you're being tested. And even if it is a mistake, the sooner you say something, the better. Just say something really polite. I like to go like just a little high pitch, like hui, hui, and like raise my hand. And then if they're not responding, then I'll say something, oi, oi, or hey, hey, like just kind of polite, not like aggressive, but trying to get attention and making sure they see me and saying something. And then if they still ride it and get in front of me, then I'll talk to them after the wave. Now, I've gotten a lot better. I used to be really bad at this. I used to get really aggressive. I used to get in fights because I was like, what are you doing? And like I said before, that mindset, that wave riding mindset, you have to be in this warrior mindset where you're wanting to hit the lips and do all this aggressive stuff. And it's easy then to transfer that to the other person. I've gotten a lot better at separating those. And so I can have a conversation with someone after that and be like, hey, that's not cool. That's not how it works here. That was my wave. Next time, if I say something, make sure you jibe off of it or go the other way, go left, whatever it is. So anyway, we've talked a lot about this. The other thing in this discussion is making sure that we're all on the same page about priority rules. Now, the rule with priority rules is that there is no hard and fast rule with priority rules. Every spot is different. And if you're a traveling windsurfer, it's your job to talk to the locals, find out what the priority rules are, and abide by them. In some spots, like in Australia, for example, you take turns. You have a sort of a carousel of riders, and you take turns catching waves. I like that system. That's a really great system. It's good for bigger guys like Jeff or me. At Hokipa, it's the first person on the wave. And so if I go out to Japan and catch a wave and come back, it doesn't matter if someone's upwind of me. It's my wave. And even if I'm way down catching it like in the channel and someone then afterwards catches that middles, it's my wave. And now I try not to be a dick. So if that person is going to have a better ride, I'll tack off and go out and I get another one. But Hokipa, first person on the wave, which is why you see guys go so far out. So if you look at the outside, it's me, Levi, Brazinho, Morgan. We're out there sometimes talking to each other, catching waves. And a lot of other people stay on the inside and they're wondering why they're not getting waves. And it's because they're not going out far enough. Now, there are other spots where upwind rider does have priority. There's other spots like in Pozo, and Pozo it can be a little bit contentious, and it's maybe also changing as the guard changes. It's maybe changing. But when I started going there, what was that, 17 years ago, 18 years ago, and it was like Daida, Dario, and these guys policing the break. There's a certain peak, and it's whoever catches the wave on that peak, which is blew my mind when I was there, which means you can be riding the wave, doing turns on the wave. Someone can jibe on the wave at that peak and then claim priority because they're closer to the peak, which to me doesn't make any sense, but I'm a tourist there. It's my job to respect it. It's not my job to question it. So try and follow that when I'm there, even if it doesn't really seem to make sense. Now, okay, a lot of discussion going on about priority, about drop-ins. Jeff, does that answer your question? Does anyone else have a question about drop-ins before we move on? I'm just going to refresh this, see if there is something else in the page. Wait for Jeff. Oh, Eric, that's you on Facebook. Nice. All right, yeah, so that's everything. So we've covered a lot of different topics. Coming to the close of our live stream, Jeff, I want to hear if you're still with us, whether that answers your question. If you're watching this on the recap, let us know in the comments to the post. I wonder if anyone else has other questions. I'm going to hang out for a couple more minutes and then I'm going to call it a night. Let's just recap a couple things. If you're interested in doing some kind of Pozo coaching, let me know. Again, it's sort of a under the radar thing. John is asking if I'm going to compete in Pozo. Yeah, I'm undecided as of yet. But probably not. I think there's just too much else going on in my life right now. I want to put a good amount of energy into the coaching, and if I'm competing, it's hard to do much else. It really eats up a chunk of time and attention, and also the competing doesn't bring that much joy to me. I really appreciate that I've had my competitive career and I have some results that I'm really proud of. But in general, it hasn't made me happy. And I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot as a windsurfer, as a human, all of those things. And I'm still interested in it. But if I look at what makes me happy, like for example, the coaching, this makes me a lot happier than the competing does. It's a lot more fulfilling to share what I've learned in windsurfing over the last 20 whatever years rather than trying to compete and be judged on it and dealing with subjective judges. And yeah, I don't know. It's just I don't know if it's a format thing or competing in general, but it's something that hasn't brought me a lot of satisfaction. But that said, I have entered the competition, so we'll see. All right. Jeff, I think, has signed off. So I am going to sign off as well and wish you all a windy, wonderful week. I'll see you next week, Sunday. Remember to post your photos, videos, questions, comments, concerns, all of that stuff in our Facebook group. If you want to support the live stream, the best way to do that is to sign up for the think tank at the moment, or any of the other courses as they get rolled out. But the think tank right now is pretty fun. It's a good way to support the stream. You can do that on my.windsurfingmasterclass.com or just windsurfingmasterclass.com, and you can get there from there. And yeah, with that, I'll say have a good week. All right, everyone. Take care. Goodbye. Good night.